All right, so let's add in probably well, in my opinion, the most fun submission to do from the mount, the arm bar from the mount, okay? So there's two different styles of arm bars from the mount. There's really fast whipping arm bars where you spin around people's heads and pull the arm back really straight. Those are great. I'm 45, I don't really like to do that much agility stuff like that. I like to use heavy pressure and basically grind people into submission and try to use my weight and pressure to make people tap from the pressure itself and less from the arm bar itself, right? That's kind of like a game we like to play on the submission, is try to make the person tap from the pressure before the submission even finishes, right? So I'm gonna start the same way I started my arm bar, by offsetting a little bit and getting on this collar grip. And you know, like right away, Ken did it instinctively, right? When you start attacking somebody's neck, usually the first thing they're gonna do is trap your arm generally like this, because he wants to trap this arm, and if my weight is centered, if he bridges and rolls, yeah, he's gonna take me over, and now I'm in the guard and I have a really hard time finishing this choke from there. If my grips were set up, I could maybe finish it. I don't have anything really going for me yet, so he just escaped the position, and I lost it. So I don't want to do that, right? So I keep myself offset for a little bit, but I'm going to use his reaction and his attempt to defend the position against him, okay? For him to put his arms up, he has to take his elbows away from his hips, at least in some respect, right? If I'm not attacking his neck, his elbows are in tight, right? I can't really attack his arms because they're like glued to me, right? And he's going to try to use that to escape. But the moment I start attacking his neck, he's probably going to open up just a little bit of space, and that's what I'm looking for. So what I'm gonna do is work to grind my hips up and get as deep in his armpits as I can first, okay? So I'm gonna drive up and try to sit really, really high on his chest, all right? The higher you get people's elbows away from their hips, the less power they have to push back with them, the worse their frames are. Like, he can barely even frame on me with that. So I'm already in a really good spot to start to attack, all right? But the next thing I wanna do is get even higher. So I'm gonna turn kind of basically turn the corner around his head a little bit and bring this knee right above his head. So my right knee is gonna be off the mat. It's gonna raise up just a little more as I circle around and sit way up on his shoulders. Okay. So now what happens in this position is I don't have hardly any weight on Ken right now at all, okay? But it's a very strong, stable position because I have a really good, wide, triangular base, right? As long as I keep everything pinched in tight, I'm in a pretty good spot. I can put a little bit of weight on him, but the cool thing about this position is because his arms are generally so high up away from his hips, he doesn't really have any power to push me with them, or at least this one. He doesn't really have any power to do anything with it. And I'm so far away from his hips, he doesn't really have any power to bump and bridge. If he tries to bump from here, he's wasting his own energy because I'm so far away, he can't off balance me with it, right? So I'm gonna attack right away though. I'm gonna take my left arm, I'm gonna reach all the way across and grab onto his tricep on the far side. Okay, I'll explain all this kind of stuff while we're doing this in a little bit, but for now I'm just gonna reach across, grab that tricep. If you wanna pull your other grip out now, if you haven't yet, go ahead and grab it and use both hands to pull this in, okay? But my goal here is to pull his elbows as close together as possible, pull this elbow as close to my belly as possible, and lift his shoulder off the mat, okay? Now once I lift his shoulder off the mat, I pinch my knee into his armpit, okay? Kick my leg straight, circle around and scoop up his back of his shoulder with my calf, okay? So I scoop and I pinch. Now what happens is I can shift and transfer my weight up onto his chest where I can be really, really heavy, okay? But the tighter of a squeeze I have here with this calf, like this, the more pain he's gonna be in because it compresses your shoulders together, it lifts your arms up over your head, and then I have 200 pounds sitting right here on his chest, maybe off to this side, but it's super uncomfortable, right? So now from this position, I just grab both wrists together, right? Try to get this one as close to my elbow as possible so I can squeeze it, grab onto my own lapel, and then I'm just gonna place my hand on the mat. This is gonna get even heavier for a second. Just for balance, I put this hand down, okay? Now there's tons of pressure on his chest. I'm just gonna take this knee up over his face, pinch my knees together, and then as I pull his wrist into my chest, I start driving my hips into the back of his arm just a little bit, and that'll finish. If that doesn't work for whatever reason, you can kind of keep going with it, but sometimes it's best just to step over, sit back, pinch tight, and finish here. But I highly recommend trying to finish from the top. That way you don't lose any position, it's very safe. If everything fails, you're still probably going to be in the mount. All right. So same as before, right? Offset a little bit, drive my hips up under the armpits as high as I can first. I can lean forward, look at how far his elbows are, like try to like push on me and stuff. Like I'm very stable here. If I put my heels on his hips too, I can ride this a long time, okay? Now I want to try to get my belly, if I can, around this elbow so I can move my chest around it, push it up a little bit, and then circle. So now his arm is like right between my legs, all right? So more than likely in this position, he's gonna block this, yeah, by crossing his arms with this one over the top, okay? I can't pull his forearm through his other forearm anymore, okay? So it's one of the reasons why we're grabbing onto this tricep. So as I grab this, I'm pulling up on it, sliding my leg up into the armpit first. I don't want to be like this, okay? I want this to be as deeply connected to this as possible. So I slide up as I twist, lock that heel as close to my knee as I can, okay? Now I just put this wrist in my elbow crook, grab my jacket, lean over, step this one, pinch my thighs together real tight, drive my hips in for the tap.
Yeah. I mean, it's awful, but it's good.
All right, one more time. So drive up first. Right, if you don't drive up first, it's hard to make this separation of the elbows when you turn. So then I scoot and turn, grab the far tricep. If I grab and his arm is under like this, I don't have to worry about anything. Like he can't defend it because his arm is in the wrong place, right? So this is good for me. So I slide this one into position, grab this wrist, come up, finish my arm bar. But if he grabs here, right, I really want to try to pinch these elbows together as tight as I can when I squeeze. Because now look, his defense is really bad. I can still straighten his arm, right through it. And again, we'll talk about that stuff a little more in detail in a few minutes. Cool? All right, let's try it. 1, 2, 3. All right, so just a couple quick details. Some of the whys of what we're doing and stuff like that. Right, so just like I said, bringing this knee up into the armpit really helps intensify the pressure and stuff, just because you get a good squeeze and everything. This hip has to be way up in this armpit as well too. So the way you can tell is where your knee position is. If your knee is off to the side of the head, the problem with that is my hip isn't connected to his armpit here, right? I want my knee and my hip, I want this femur here, right? I want this bone on my leg to go parallel or perpendicular straight across his armpits. Okay, right now it's not. Right now it's close to this one, but it's further from this one. It might be hard to see from your angle, but there's a lot of space right here. The problem that happens when that happens is that my weight sits back a lot further down on Ken's chest, and it's hard for me to isolate like a really good spot. Like I don't feel like I have a very good squeeze here, and I'm actually in a pretty good position, and it feels kind of heavy, but not like as heavy as it could be. If I just slide up a little further so my knee is above the head, like that, now when I bring this across, now I can feel his armpit, the bottom of his arm here on my leg, and I can feel the bottom of his arm here on this leg. So now I know when I switch, I'm gonna be right on his lungs, like basically compressing the lungs out of his chest as I sit there. And that's a really important part of it, because like I said, I wanna try to make him tap from the pressure as much as I wanna make him tap from the arm bar, right? So let me just kind of explain this really quick, the figure 4 thing, okay? So when he's defending like this, I can't pull his arm through his other forearm, right, because it's making a cross, okay? But the more I pinch his elbows together, it starts to bring his wrists parallel together, right? And when they're parallel together, they straighten together, right? So you have a much better chance of straightening both arms, right? If you can pinch the elbows together. If you pinch the elbows together, you see that? His forearms are parallel to each other. Like, it's gonna be really hard for him to stop me from pulling that in unless he's just using all bicep muscle. He can't use 2 arms to defend anymore, right? Whereas if he's here, like, he's gonna beat me here all day long because he's building a structure in front of his arm, okay? So that's why we pull that arm in. 1, for the pressure, but 2, to alleviate this defense. This is the most common defense for arm bars from this position, right? So just as we're going, the next couple reps, we're gonna move on to another technique soon from here. But make sure you're bringing your knee around the top of the head, okay? You should be positionally like confident once you've done this a couple times in this position to know, like, I don't really even have to submit Ken here. I know they can hang out here as long as I want because I'm so far away from his core. You can't really bump too hard and throw me off too much, right? Plus he doesn't have the lung capacity to do that. He needs energy to do that. But I know he can't push me with his arms. I'm in a really good spot. I can just kind of take my time, make sure everything's right. I could even unweave his arms if I wanted to, right? Or I could do this. I like to have this hand out for base, amplify that pressure even more, and make sure I have a good fulcrum on the elbow. Okay? So really, that's the only thing I really see that's kind of deficient. Just make sure your knee is above the head on your V around the shoulders, okay?
Hey, just go. 2 questions. When you're collapsing the arms, I was grabbing from the shoulder, but if you get what you want by the elbow. Is that what you like to do?
Both ways. So yeah, when you're scooping up initially to get the shoulder off the mat, sometimes it's better to be closer to the shoulder.
Okay.
But you can accomplish the same, I'll try not to be too bad. You can accomplish the same goal with this grip if you have a good pinch as this grip. It's almost the same thing. It doesn't really matter at this point. You could just grab here, switch, and then slide up. Slide up.
And then when you fall back, you want to try, if you have to fall back, I know you don't like to do that, but if you have to, you like to keep both arms?
If I can, if I have to, yeah.
Okay.
But if you fall back on this, really try your best, however you're doing it. Let's move your block in. Yes, if I have both, right? Fall back so that you're looking towards their feet. So when I go, I'm gonna be looking slightly this way, and just make sure this leg is really heavy on your head, okay? So that he can't sit up. Because the problem with falling back on that is you're falling. You can let go, you can stop.
What's that?
As I fall back, look at how high my hip is from the ground. When I fall, watch what happens. I have momentum, right? So if he has a good blockade, he comes up, I'm probably gonna lose my position, right? So as you go back, make sure you cover that head real heavy. And it's just generally good practice to point your head towards their feet, right? As they get here, maybe this way, make sure he's not gonna sit up with me, right? Cool. All right, cool. Let's go. 1, 2, 3. From this position here, right? Moving up, circling, getting here. So at any time, if I kept this grip and it's a relatively decent grip, at any time, if I feel like for whatever reason I can't get my submission, I can probably put my thumb in the collar, come back to the other side, and just switch back to the choke, right? It's a pretty good option. I don't particularly like it because I have a better option. Usually when I'm here, circling around the head, I'm trapping the arms, trying to do all this stuff. If Ken's really strong or whatever, and I just can't get his elbows together and I can't uncross this, I don't even care anymore. I can keep my leg here if I want, or I can switch to the other position. It doesn't matter where your leg is for this one. All I'm gonna do is reach around his arm on the backside with my other arm and scoop it up. If I scoop up this wrist, that's fine. If it's not there, whatever. Both wrists is totally fine. So I scoop in, and now I just pull my other arm out, and I grab the top wrist, and then I grab my own wrist, okay? And now I'm on an Americana on the top arm. So all I have to do is pinch my right elbow in as I rotate his wrist. So it's basically this submission here that we did, right? From side controller to the mount. But I'm just in this position instead. Super strong. It can be here, it can be here. This is even stronger because you're pinching the shoulder. But it's a great combo because as I'm going, right, everything's getting set up. Everything's lovely. Go ahead and pop that underneath. Yeah, good, right? Can't get quite what I want, right? Pulling in, I can just come across, grab this grip, and go, right? So I start to go, maybe he's really flexible or something like that, or he grabs his own hand and starts to defend it. Anytime he grabs his own hand, he's giving me the arm that I want to attack in the first place. So I can switch between the Americana and the straight armbar very easily, right? So same thing, I'm scooping around just like before, scooping this up, right? Pulling this arm out, still pulling in the elbow as far as I can, because the deeper I get around this arm, the better. Scooping everything up into one. I could even come through and isolate it if I want, but just your left hand grabs their wrist, your hand grabs your own wrist, and then I just open it, okay? So now, just because I showed the morning class, I feel like I have to. When I'm here to attacking the submission, right? If at any time I feel like I can't get that to work, maybe he's too flexible or whatever, I have both of his elbows trapped against my body. So if you're a white belt, you can't really do this too much, but I can wrist lock either one of these wrists very easily all day long. because they're both trapped, both isolated. Or I could just switch back and forth between everything. Just be a real jerk about it. I mean, there's so many submissions here, it's ridiculous. At any point, I could always scoop it up, switch, and finish the armbar. Okay? So let's add that in. Ready? Let's go 1, 2, 3. All right, so there's an important principle to understand in jiu-jitsu about space and pressure and all that stuff. Basically, if you understand that an object needs space around it in order to move, obviously, right? So if something's in space and there's something that's around it that's very tight on all sides, this thing will never work its way free because it's tight. It doesn't have any space to move. But the looser whatever's surrounding it, it's eventually going to wiggle its way free and fall out, right? Like it can find an escape route because there's not pressure on all sides. And that's what we're trying to do with our bodies when we're doing jiu-jitsu in general. It doesn't matter if you're working from the top or the bottom, mount, the back, whatever. You're trying to take away as much space between your opponent and yourself in every single place that you're touching them, because the more space you can take away, the less chance they have of being able to wiggle and move and stuff like that. They can't generate any force without space, right? So space is your enemy when you're on top, when you're controlling somebody, and if you're trying to escape, space is what you want. That's why we build frames, and we make little bits of space here and there, and then try to exploit it, okay? But I want you guys to kind of think about that as you're doing your techniques, your submissions, everything. The tighter you can pinch your elbows when you're doing an Americana or an armbar or something like that, the tighter you can pinch everything when you're doing a choke, the tighter you can make yourself around your opponent, the more efficient your jiu-jitsu is going to become. Because if you're not constantly fighting them moving, because your position is so tight, then you're not going to waste any energy fighting against them moving, right? You don't have to deal with somebody trying to escape them out if you're so tight that they just can't escape them out, right? So that's one thing I want you guys to start thinking about. Every time you're drilling stuff, I just want you to eliminate the space between you and your partner and try to figure out how to do that, because that creates pressure. Pressure creates mistakes, right? The more pressure you put on people, the more mistakes they make trying to escape, and they give you some. All right, cool. Great job tonight, everybody.